Thank you. The member for Mount Warren Blackwood.
So I rise to speak in support of the amendment put up by the member for Cottesloe. So I want to talk about something this parliament does not discuss often enough, and that is what a home actually means. Owning a home has always been at the heart of what Australians work towards, not just a financial asset, as a place, as a piece of ground that belongs to your family. Where you bring your baby home from the hospital, where your kids learn to ride a bike in the driveway, where you sit around the table on Christmas morning and the world outside can just wait. That idea that if you work hard and you save and you can put down roots and own your own piece of paradise, is one of the most fundamental things this country has offered its people. It's not just an aspiration. For most Australians, it is the aspiration. A home is not an investment vehicle. It is where memories are made, where children grow and find their feet, where families are built, where people age in their places they have known and loved for decades. That is what is at stake when we talk about housing. Not numbers, not policy papers, people's lives. And in Warren Blackwood, that dream is becoming harder to reach by the day. I hear from families in the electorate who are driving long distances just to attend rental inspections and coming home empty-handed. Nurses who accepted a posting to Margaret River or Denmark because they wanted to serve that community, and then left within a year because there was simply nowhere to live or couldn't afford the rent to stay. These are not people who did not try hard enough. These are people who wanted to put down roots in one of the most beautiful parts of Western Australia and simply could not, because the housing is not there. And when families cannot find a home, and when workers cannot stay, when essential services cannot be staffed, communities start to hollow out. You lose school enrolments. You then lose a teacher. You lose the medical practice. You lose the businesses that depend on local spending. You lose the things that make a town a community rather than just a place on a map. A home is where life happens. When people cannot find one, it is not just a housing problem, it turns into a community problem. WA's wealth comes from the regions. West Australia is not a poor state. We all know that. Last year, our resources sector generated $220 billion in aggregate sales. Mining royalties brought more than $10.8 billion into state coffers in a single financial year. This government is sitting on one of the strongest fiscal positions of any jurisdiction in the country. And that wealth does not come from the city, it comes from the regions. The iron ore that underpins this state's budget comes from the Pilbara. The gold that sets record sales of $29 billion last year comes from the goldfields. And the lithium that is powering the global electric vehicle revolution, the material going into the batteries in electric cars, in the phones in everyone's pockets, in the clean energy future the world is working towards, that lithium comes from Greenbushes, right here in Warren Blackwood. The regions are not passengers in this state's economy. We are the engine. I want to spend a moment on Greenbushes because it tells a story to this parliament needs to hear. Talison Lithium Greenbushes operation is the largest hard rock lithium mine in the world. It produced nearly 1.5 million tonnes of lithium concentrate last year. In 2024 alone, it contributed more than $853 million to local, state and federal governments. That mine is not just important to West Australia, it is strategically important to the world. The lithium it produced goes into the batteries powering electric vehicles across the world. When government and car makers talk about decarbonising transport, they're talking about product that comes in significant part from a small town in the southwest of Western Australia. And last year, the primary school servicing that town made the front page of the West Australian, not for an achievement or a community milestone, for maintenance work that had been long overdue. The point is not about one building, the point is what it represents. Millions to governments in 1 year, from one mine in one town. The town whose mine is helping to power the electric vehicle revolution should not have to fight to get basic maintenance for its school. and that is a failure of government priority, not a reflection on the community. That is the bargain the regions are getting at the moment. We generate the wealth. We should not have to go cap in hand for the basics. Taliesin is not the regional ATM. I want to be clear about something because it matters. It is not Taliesin's job to fill the gap. They are a mining company, not a regional government. They pay the royalties, they employ local people, they support the community in many ways, and that is genuinely valued by the community. But Taliesin should not be the regional ATM in the government's absence. Taliesin should not be expected to step in and fund basic community services every time the Labor government falls short of its obligations. That is not their responsibility, it is the government's. When we allow a situation to develop where the burden of regional community infrastructure falls back onto the private sector because the government has not done their job. We've got the relationship between mining royalties and regional investment exactly backwards. The money flows from Greenbushes to Perth, the money flows from the goldfields to Perth, the money flows from the Pilbara to Perth. It is the Labor governments that must invest it back to make the communities livable. Housing and infrastructure are the same problem. Housing matters, but a house on its own is not enough. You cannot ask families to move to regional communities, to raise children, put down roots, make a life, if those communities do not have the basic infrastructure that makes development possible in the first place. In towns like Boyac Brook, Nannup, Northcliffe and Pemberton, headworks costs, the costs of connecting a development to water, sewerage and power networks are making projects unviable before a single slab is poured. Developers and private landowners simply cannot absorb those costs on top of construction. So projects that would add housing stock do not proceed. The land is there, the will is there, the economics are not, because the government has not invested in the enabling infrastructure. And it's not just large developments. Homeowners trying to do something as straightforward as adding a granny flat or a secondary dwelling on their property, practical steps that would meaningfully increase housing options for families, for ageing parents, for workers, are hitting a wall of red tape. Bell ratings are being applied in ways that are inconsistent and in many cases simply impractical. I have constituents who have been assessed at the highest flame zone rating based on a handful of trees. The result is that approval for a granny flat or a boundary realignment, even a basic secondary structure on a serviced residential block, becomes effectively impossible. Applications are advised against before they are even lodged, and people walk away. Another housing option has been lost. We have the land, we have the people ready and willing to build. What we do not have is the planning system or an infrastructure investment framework that makes it feasible to do so. Until the government addresses the headworks costs, the power, the water and the servicing in regional areas and the consistency of planning approvals, including Bell, housing targets in the regions will remain aspirational rather than real. And Warren Blackwood and regional WA have a pattern of being overlooked. This is not new, and that is the problem. The regions have been raising these concerns for years. Government regional officer housing has seen a net increase of just 78 homes across the entire state over the past decade. That's 78 in 10 years. In a state generating over $220 billion in resources sales annually. We have run this experiment, we know what happens. The nurse leaves, the teacher leaves, the businesses close, the schools lose enrolments, the businesses struggle for staff. One thing leads to another. The 7 cities, I want to speak on the Premier's plan for regional WA, something he has labelled the 7 cities vision. Last week's $692 million regional housing announcement named the 7 cities: Bunbury, Kalgoorlie, Port Hedland, Karratha, Broome, Geraldton and Albany. Well, Premier, if this is the vision for the regions, I have to say it has a few blind spots.
Just a few.
Yeah, just a couple. Your 7 cities initiative will deliver 500 new grow housing homes across regional WA.
Is Margaret win that?
No. But no. But not a single one will be built in Warren Blackwood, member for Central Wheatville.
Nor in my electorate as well.
Despite the clear need for more homes in like Denmark, Manjimup and Margaret River. This is a region with a rental vacancy rate below 1%. Population growth of more than 8,400 people since 2016. And social housing availability at around half the regional average. Beyond that, Labor's broad promise to build 34,000 new homes across the state is vague at best and has attracted much criticism from industry who claim we don't have the workers to get it done. I'm doubtful this initiative will have any meaningful impact on housing stock or affordability anywhere in WA, including Warren Blackwood. Meanwhile, Labor's increase to the stamp duty concession for first home buyers to $600,000 won't move the needle at all in places like Margaret River or Denmark, where the median home price starts at $850,000 and only goes up. The Australian dream of owning a home should not stop at city limits. It should be available to the nurse in Manjimup, the teacher in Pemberton, the family in Margaret River, who just want somewhere to call their own. A place to bring their children home, a place where memories get made, a place that is theirs. But there is something bigger at stake here too. The mines, the farms, the timber industry, the tourism operators, the industries that generate this state's wealth and sustain this state's budget, they all depend on people being able to live in the regions. You cannot run a mine without a workforce. You cannot sustain a farm without families putting down roots in the community. And you cannot maintain a regional economy if the communities that support it are becoming impossible to live in. Making the regions livable is not a favour to the people who live there. It is how we protect the mines, the farms and the industry that this state depends on. So I ask, invest in regional housing, fix the infrastructure, cut through the red tape, because when there are no regions, there is no state. Thank you.